Hi, I'm Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and in this short series of videos I want to tell you about 10 things which I've learned over the last 20 years in which I've been investing in my own right for myself. And the very first thing on the list is there's rarely just one way of doing things. Now it's quite interesting because I do a lot of property training. Quite often I'm training with other property professionals, other experienced property investors. And one thing that struck me quite early on when I was training is that probably we all have a slightly different way of doing things. What makes this particularly interesting is I keep an eye on the Facebook groups and I go onto the property forums, and you'll so often see people adamantly state that there's only one way to do a particular thing in property. And I look at that and I sort of raise an eyebrow because in my experience it's just not true. Now it could be the case, and I suspect it is, that those who know the least usually shout the loudest. And so it may be that there's somebody who's relatively new to property, they don't really know how property works. Perhaps they've read something in a book, or perhaps they've been to a training and heard something, but they've latched onto some idea or some concept and come to the conclusion or come away with the erroneous view that that's the only way to do things. Now, it might be self-evident that in some respects there's obviously going to be more than one way to do things. If you think about becoming successful in property per se, there's now so many different strategies that we could follow that there isn't just one way of doing it. Back in the day, most of us would probably have thought about buy-to-let, but there's now so many more other strategies. There's HMOs, there's commercial conversions, serviced accommodation, rent-to-rent, to name just a few. And all of those things are good. So in that respect, there's always going to be more than one way of doing some things. But in my experience, there's rarely just one route to get to a particular point that you may want to get to in property. And over time, if you're in property long enough, you'll probably find your own shortcuts. In today's language, you could say you'll find your own hacks, I suppose. You'll find your own little techniques, you'll find your own little tweaks to make things happen. And you may do it in a similar but different way to other people, or you may do something completely different to other people, but you end up at the same point. So never ever think that there's only one way to do property. The best way to do anything in property, in my humble opinion, is the way that suits you. So if somebody comes up to you and says, don't do it that way, you've got to do it this way, I'd be very suspicious of that, and I would go out and investigate and find a way that works for you. Now, it's good to be guided by people, it's good to model people who are successful, people who've gone ahead of you, but that doesn't mean that you have to slavishly copy them. You can use the good bits, you can use the bits that work for you, you can use the bits that resonate with you, but you can tweak it, you can nurture it, you can slightly adjust it, you can do whatever, adopt it and adapt it so that it works for you. So never be put off by anybody who's telling you that there's only one way to do anything in property. It probably isn't true. Just go and find the way to do it that works for you. Another example of this could be around the concept of rules. I hear so many people quoting things back to me which is like a rule. But rules are there to be broken, aren't they? But I think, to be honest, it's not even a case of rules are there to be broken. Quite often somebody's interpreting a guideline or a suggestion as being a rule, as being more solid or more authoritative than it actually is. So I always get suspicious about that as well. Until next time, here's to successful property investing.